The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guests, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented.
Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their soul purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea Lynn. Today's guest is Clain Udy, and he's here to talk to us about his journey with his son and the autism that they discovered with him. Let's welcome Clain. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Great. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to share our story with you all about transformation.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear it as well because I think as much as this will be helpful for any parent that has an autistic child, I think this is also going to be helpful for any human in general because I imagine a lot of the transformational pieces that you've gone through can apply to just anyone.
100%. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to the beginning. You have the birth of your son, and let's talk about at what point you discover that he has autism.
My son was born in 1996, and I had all of the kind of the normal expectations that a parent would have of their child. And I think that we kind of get in this mindset of our children have to be normal, but they kind of have to be more than normal. They have to be kind of super normal
Mhm.
in certain ways. So we have all those prototypical dreams, and a lot of that was based on my dreams for myself, honestly. And so I could envision him. I was very involved in sports and athletics and sprinter at a collegiate level. So I saw him as kind of taking me to the next level, if you will.
That is extremely powerful, and that's a deep reflection that you've had because I think a lot of parents don't realize how much they're trying to live through their children.
Yeah, 100%. And is most clearly seen in the fact that I achieved some degree of success running the 100 meters, but I was never like a world class sprinter. I always wanted him to become that and fulfill that part of me that I didn't quite achieve. And so we lived in Texas at the time. So our neighbors would see me dragging him around with a rubber band surgical tube to try to quicken his central nervous system. This was like at 4 or 5 years
Okay.
old. So that just shows what that expectation looked like
Mhm.
in his younger years. So he was a very good looking, yeah, little boy, always has been. And so I imagined him being popular. I imagined him coming home with a prom date and
Yeah.
coming home with all sorts of friends. And when he was 4, he still wasn't talking.
Okay.
I knew he was bright because he would disassemble things, take phones apart and all sorts of, but he wasn't speaking.
Okay.
He would do a little gibber and then throw in a word that you understood and then go, so he knew what language sounded like, just
Mhm.
didn't know how to make it.
Mhm.
So he was in speech therapy when he was young. And actually before this, we'd taken Jennifer, my wife, had taken him to the physician's assistant to get his checkup. and he had a meltdown in the office. He pitched a fit in the office, and the physician's assistant said, "This child has autism."
Oh, wow.
And I came home from work, and Jennifer told me about that experience. I was furious.
Was Jennifer bringing that up, or how did that even come about? I feel like that would be a whole conversation of you're going to the doctor with that intent of discovering like, "Hey, do you think my child possibly has autism? We're seeing this, this, and this at home."
No, he would have meltdowns, on occasion. There were some things that in hindsight we knew to be signatures of autism, but at the time we didn't associate that with autism.
You share briefly what those signatures are of autism?
Yeah, so early on, he was always more interested in things than he was interested in people.
Mm.
My wife tells a story of, he would be lying on his back on the ground and she would be making faces and smiling at him, trying to get him to engage with her and react. And he would just look past her to the ceiling fan. He was more interested in the mechanics and the patterns of the ceiling fan than he was interacting with Jennifer. So those kind of responses that you've developed, they were there, but they just weren't very strong.
Okay.
He would get lost. Like we would take him into a grocery store or in a supermarket or whatever. He would immediately bolt. He was always looking to get away, to escape something. And I later realized that was mostly trying to escape to solitude because there was so much stimuli coming at him, so much that he didn't know how to handle that. He just wanted to get away from it.
Okay, yeah, I get that though, right? You're like in a kind of a quiet parking lot. You walk through those doors and poof, it's cold air, it's bright lights, it's people everywhere, it's shopping carts coming at you. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I want to just curl under a clothing rack, which in one story, we even had the people, the pager at like it was Target say, "Has anyone seen a little boy,
I know.
over the intercom?" And we found him, he was under a clothing rack.
Yeah.
So there were things like that that were just typical. And then again, the meltdowns. He would have meltdowns for no apparent reason, but we thought this is all just kind of normal stuff that will work itself out.
Mhm.
And then we got this news from his physician's assistant. Well, her diagnosis. And the reason I reacted so strongly, number one, is how dare she make this snap diagnosis? And then I think really what it did for me is it started to kind of tug at the threads of the vision that I had of who he was at the time. And I started to kind of see that as a threat to unraveling that.
I can imagine you were frustrated with, like you're saying, your vision is being unraveled, but also that I know for me as a parent, I would be like, "Oh my gosh, how did I miss this? I should have known. Like, she's not wrong. There's this, this, and this." There's things with our children sometimes where we kind of miss it for a while, and it's like, should have known. I mean, my daughter went almost a whole school year struggling and struggling and struggling, and finally it dawned on me that my husband is legally blind, so she might not be able to see. And so I took her to the doctor, and her vision isn't terrible, but she did need glasses, but she also had a visual processing disorder. But I just kept thinking, I don't know, school's just hard and not really, I don't know, thinking that it could be anything else. But I get that.
And it took me a minute to get there because again, I was just defensive. I was threatened. I calmed down. And so I started searching, what is autism? What is it? The only exposure I had to it was Rain Man, watching the movie Rain Man.
Yeah.
And even though by the end of the movie, you have a much more sympathetic understanding, a view of Raymond,
Mhm.
you saw him through the lens of deficit and disorder. You saw him as still being mostly dysfunctional, despite the strengths that he demonstrated in the movie and in real life. You look past that to look at all that he wasn't versus all that he was.
Right.
And so that's the scary part of trying to understand what this thing is. And I very much saw it as something external that was afflicting my son.
Mhm.
this thing called autism that I didn't understand. So I was in denial for the most part. And then one day, Jennifer told me that his speech and language therapist had said, there might be something here that a language delay doesn't fully explain. And so that got my attention. That was like, okay, so this is a person who has seen many, many children.
Mhm.
And so that's where we first, for sure, understood that he was probably on the autism spectrum.
Yeah. I think sometimes people also have an idea that maybe their kid is, but they don't want it to be true because, like you're saying, they see it as all the things that they're not gonna be able to be or do versus the opposite of that. And so I think sometimes people just don't wanna even know yet. But I always tell people the sooner you know, the sooner you can help them and you can learn how to talk to them in the way that they need to be spoken to, and you can learn how to provide the right toys that they need to have, and you can provide all the right materials and things and surroundings that would benefit them because you kinda do box them in if you're not giving them the right environment to thrive, because they really can thrive, but they sometimes need different tools.
Yeah, it is heavily stigmatized.
Mhm,
I mean, that's seen in the fact that many parents don't even want to know. It's that frightening to them, that
mhm,
prospect. But I would even say they are going to grow up knowing that they are different.
mhm,
It's a different brain wiring, it's a distinct neurotype. And so the way they experience the world, the way they interact with people, the way they interact with environments, the way they experience life is very distinct, it's very different.
mhm,
And they're going to know that. And they're going to run into a lot of, I call them invisible electric fences along the way. They're not going to know why
mhm,
that's happening to them. But if you can help them understand right away, if you can acknowledge that, yes, they might be on the spectrum, then you can start to not only accommodate them,
mhm,
but you can build an identity around their strengths.
mhm,
And the strengths of people on the spectrum are very pronounced, very strong. And so that is what I found to be the catalyst in changing the identity around my son, the way he saw himself, the way we saw him was through strengths and discovering his strengths. So that's, I would say, yes, acknowledge, don't be fearful, don't shy away, even though you're going to go through some process of understanding what that means. Get to the point where you can see them for all that they are versus all that they're not.
mhm. Yeah, and this is making me think back to when I was teaching, and there was a little boy that they were trying to keep him in general ed, but he wasn't. He definitely was autistic, and I had worked in special ed previously, so I had some training and kind of knew how to work with them, and the teacher that usually had him was getting frustrated and couldn't handle a certain situation with him, so I stepped in for a minute and got the kid to just sit down at his desk, and the teacher looked at me, he was like, "How did you do that?" I was like, "It's simple if you know," but a lot of these teachers are not trained to work with autistic children, and they don't understand that you do have to communicate differently with them, and if you communicate the right way, they hear you, but if you don't, they don't hear you, and you're gonna get nothing from them, and so it's just that's where I really do encourage parents to get them the right support, because if you think that not putting them in the right classroom, or if you think that if you don't put them in these support services, they'll just snap out of it, that's not the case. You're not helping them any.
I kind of see it. So my wife is a big gardener. I kind of see it as a garden. You have all of these plants in the garden that are thriving. And these are probably plants that you could plant in a lot of different environments and they'll thrive, they'll do well. And then you've got these very specialized plants and they're very unique and they're very bright and they're very unusual, but they have to be in the right environment.
Mhm,
They can't just be in the same environment as everyone else in order to thrive. But if you find that environment, they will thrive. and they'll thrive in a very dramatic way. So I think our job as parents is to find that place in the garden where they
Yeah.
can thrive.
I really like that analogy. And it's even as simple as watering, right? Some plants need to be watered every day and some plants do not. And it's exactly as you're saying. So that's a really good analogy.
Yeah, in fact, I would say throughout his elementary school years, we were in full normal mode. We were doing the normal parent thing and we were trying to nudge him as close to normal as we could because we knew that in normal, that's where he would be accepted and loved and all of those things. And whenever that didn't happen, whenever he came up short of being in that normal kind of space, that's when the angst and the anxiety and the what are we going to do and the rejection really came into play. So I would say very stressful years when he was in elementary school, just trying to make him fit in a place, in a world, in an environment where it he just didn't. But still having that expectation, still having that aspiration that we're eventually, through our coaching, through our nudging, loving as it was, we'll get him there. We'll get him close enough that he'll be able to integrate fully, and we won't have to worry about some of these differences. And that simply didn't work.
Yeah.
And there was a time when he was around 12, two things happened. Number one is we went with him. Up to that point, we went with him everywhere
Mhm.
under the guise of volunteering and just being a parent. So any birthday parties, any scouting events, one of us would always be there. And that was very stressful because we were trying to do this coachy thing with him, but not make it so noticeable that he would notice it and that he would feel bad about that. But also close enough to be able to insert ourselves
Mhm.
and A, protect him, and B, try to, again, coerce him to change his behaviors, which was, in hindsight, just ridiculous. And I think the first kind of turning point came when he was 12. There was an overnight multi-day scouting event, and I wasn't able to make it the first night because of my work. So I went up, drove up this was in the high mountains, and it was cold and it was dark by the time I got there, and I found our scout troop, and I was hoping that nothing bad had happened in my absence.
Mhm.
Every year on the news, you'd hear stories about some young autistic kid going missing, frightening. So I got there and there were a couple tents. One of them, the warm glow of all the light and the laughter and the scouts chatting and telling stories. And I poked my head in the tent. I said, "Hey, is Christian here?" No, he's not here. So I went to the second tent, the only other tent other than the leader's tent. And I poked my head in. I said, Christian wasn't there.
Oh no.
And so I immediately I thought, I started to kind of panic. And someone said, I think he's in that tent. And so over kind of in the perimeter off to the side was our family tent. And it held 8 people. And it was dark and there was no light in it. And I thought, he's in there. So
Yeah.
I went and I pulled back the tent flap and he was there all by himself.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said, "Hey, Dad." And I could tell he wasn't usually very emotive, but I could
Uh-huh.
tell he was really glad to see me.
Oh.
I was really disappointed. I was really angry at the time. How could this happen? How could this be allowed to happen? But I just wanted to be with him. And so I remember laying my,
Angry, sorry, just for clarity, angry that someone had just left him alone.
yeah, that no other kid had said, this is wrong. He
Yep.
needs a friend or a leader saying, this is
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
And somebody go in, spend the night in the,
Yeah, so he was completely by himself,
yeah,
unsupervised.
yeah, just by himself.
That's crazy.
It was really gut-wrenching as a parent. You have those moments. But as I was laying there, I just got this feeling of liberation because I finally realized that, you know what, I cannot rely on the world to take care of my son.
Right.
Rely on this notion of normal. So therefore, I'm going to reject it. We're going to choose our own path and we're going to find the kind of environment that is right for him, an environment that he can thrive in. We're going to love him. We're going to fill up our tent with light and with love.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to look to other people to do that anymore. It's going to be us. And if no one else is going to be his friend, I will be his friend and I will be his best friend.
Oh,
So
that makes me want to cry. That's very sweet.
the second thing that happened soon after that was I was reading a couple of books, rereading a couple of books for my work. I was developing a leadership development training, and I read First Break All the Rules by Marcus Buckingham and Don Clifton. And then I read Now Discover Your Strengths by Marcus Buckingham and Don Clifton. It was one of those books where you read a couple pages and then you stand up and you pace because your mind is blown. And first of all, I love kind of the rebelliousness of that concept of we're not chasing after normal here. We're finding your strengths and your unique strengths. And we're going to focus on those. That was the central message of the book.
Okay.
Overwhelmingly, your job as a leader is to find strengths and grow those strengths and put people in a place daily where they can thrive in their strengths. So that message just really hit home with me. And then furthermore, I realized that this applies to no one more than Christian, my son.
Mhm.
My wife and I, we talked about that concept and we said, from now on, we're going to focus overwhelmingly on his strengths. They're kind of hard to see because we hadn't been looking at them. We hadn't been paying attention to them. We'd been more distracted with everything that was not normal.
Yeah, and trying to make those things normal. How can we
That's
get
right.
him to act this way, do that? I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we started to discover his strengths and we started to grow those strengths. And so from that day forward, things changed. I can see that we didn't really set out to change the way he saw himself, but that's what happened by focusing on his strengths. He had demonstrated a few of those strengths before, like when he was in second grade, he was always visual spatial skills were like super high. So he drew a picture of a highway going to a point of no return, and the phone lines were diminishing almost like mathematically. And the ratio, and his second grade teacher said, no second grader does this.
Yeah.
And then he had an IQ test. We were kind of nervous about what that would be, but he was above normal in almost all categories. Communication, slightly below normal, but visual spatial skills, like 99 percentile, like just
Wow.
off the charts high. So we started to key in on those clues, started to reference all of his interests and all the things that he was curious about. And that was cars. And so I was not a car guy at the time, but I became a car guy.
Yeah.
We watched Top Gear, which is a British motoring show,
Yeah.
every week. And for his, I think, 14th birthday, for Christmas, we had a classic car book and we put a picture of a classic Mustang in the book. And we said, for Christmas, you're going to get a car and we're going to restore it together.
Oh, fun.
So we, over a 3-year period, we restored a 1965 Mustang that became his car.
Yeah. And I bet it ran perfectly.
Well,
Like, no. I mean, it just seems like he would have done a great job.
yeah, he was, again, it was just like these mini celebrations, these little mini triumphs. We would try to understand, okay, so how do we overhaul the distribution system? How do we put a modern distribution system in? How do we do this, and that, and the other? And it was just solving problem and followed by high fives, when we got it figured out. So
Yeah.
it was 3 years of figuring out problems and then those ending in high fives.
I know we're talking in the context of autism, but I feel like this is something that would be phenomenal for every child. And I feel like this is something that should be incorporated in the classrooms and really encouraging teachers to help every student to find their strengths because there is so much insecurity in the world. I feel like that's such a struggle right now. Everybody struggles with their self confidence, and knowing your strengths helps you to thrive in the world. And if you're thriving, then that self confidence is much higher. So, is this what led you to creating your program, First Ascent?
Well, yeah. So first of all, you're absolutely correct. I think strengths and seeing strengths and focusing on strengths is the catalyst for changing one's identity.
Hmm.
If you can develop a self identity grounded in your strengths, then that changes everything. It changes how you see yourself and it changes
Absolutely.
your life ultimately. So, just to back up again, we had seen a lot of change, positive change with Christian. Always have. He's an incredibly driven person and he's always made incredible improvements throughout his life. But, around when he was 14 or so, I started to look into the future. It was one of those moments where you go, are we going to go down the protective route of saying he's always going to live with us? He's not going to live on his own. We're going to be there to protect him. And we're going to lower the expectation in terms of having a career, in terms of living independently. And I'm not saying that this is right for everyone, but it was right for us. Anyway, we chose, there's only one choice, and that is for him to uh, pursue a life where he could live and would live independent of us, live on his own. And the key to that was having a career.
Hmm.
And so I did a lot of research into what the career landscape looked like for autistic people, and it was not good. Like
Right.
85%, upwards of 85% of people you would say are high functioning were either unemployed or underemployed. 85%. That's just, it blew my mind.
Wow.
So I started to try to figure out, I did a lot of research. I worked a little bit with the University of Utah where we lived at the time and to try to understand what are the root causes here? Why is this unemployment figure so high among a very talented population, very smart population? And so what I landed on was, again, building a strength foundation and then aligning them to a near ideal career and our normal career alignment process that marginally works for the general population was absolutely failing for this group. They were ending up in careers and environments that were not well suited, and their strengths and their interests and their abilities are very asymmetric. So they could be like extremely smart, extremely competent in one area, extremely interested in very specific things, but unless you get them in that space where they can thrive in that very specific space, the outcomes are probably not going to be very good. And they weren't very good. So I developed this First Ascent program really to start implementing with my son. And then I started to offer that just outside of work to families in the area. Again, this is in Utah. And then it worked. It not only the unexpected consequences, I thought I was just helping people understand their strengths and aligning to and putting a career path together for them with them. But it really was transformational. They started to see themselves differently and their families, their parents started to see their kids differently. And it's a program that I started up again last year.
What does the program look like? Is it a series of tests or is it conversations with the parents about activities? How do you go about figuring out somebody's strength?
Yeah, so it's evolved quite a bit since I initially started it, but it just starts with a strengths assessment survey. And right now, that's an AI driven assessment. It's an autism specific assessment, but it gives a full strengths profile of the individual. So that's kind of like a roadmap
Hmm.
or a map for them to reference. And then there's three stages. There's the align stage where we look at discovering your strengths, understanding your strengths, interests, abilities, and then starting to look at a wide net of career opportunities that are aligned to your strengths, and then really calibrating in and finding your summit career, which is that one summit where you have the near perfect alignment and then putting together an initial pathway. So that's the align stage. And then we have a prepare stage, which is okay, now we're going to start to, we have our assumptions about how we're going to get there. Let's start testing those along the way. So there's these little micro experiments that we run. And that's life. We think we know where we want to go, but we never know until we start going. And
Yeah.
so we take kind of the principles from the lean startup, we implement those part of this journey, these micro experiments. We have an AI Sherpa that helps answer questions about, helps us calibrate and helps guide the discussion, which wasn't available when we first did it. And then we also use modern marketing principles. How do you start engaging the companies that you want to see as being a landing spot for you? How do you warm those leads up? Basically, make them aware of who you are, start to develop some sort of trust or credibility within those communities. How do you create opportunities through networks? So that's the program that we have now. And again, I'll go back to the transformational nature of the program. It
Okay.
really does change. We talk about neurodistinction. And rather than be afraid of autism, rather than being embarrassed of autism, we want people to own it. And we want them to be proud of it. And we want them to say their strengths come as a result
Yeah.
of autism.
Yeah. Because I'm autistic, I'm extra special in this way, and this way.
Yeah. And I see the world a little differently. I might not interact with others, but this is what I am proud of. And
Hmm.
this is who I am.
Hmm.
And this is what I have to bring to society and to businesses.
Yeah.
So that's it really, again, like all things, it's all driven by my son and our desire to, put him in a place where he thrives in his strengths.
Yeah. Autistic or not, I think so many, I mean, it's not even just children leaving high school, even adults need help discovering where they're gonna thrive and be the most satisfied. You don't know at 18 what satisfies you really. I mean, at that age, it's staying up late with friends and eating ice cream. It's not it it's so hard to say, "Well, what is really gonna satisfy my soul?" And
What's going to light me up?
yeah,
It's not going into the high school counselor's office and deciding
right.
on schools and programs. And
Yeah,
so like that system is not working for the large majority of people,
this
young
is true.
people,
Yeah,
and it is absolutely failing
yeah.
for neurodiverse people and autistic people in specifically.
Well, I think the system is failing everybody in general. Like there's just it's kind of a mess, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I do think there needs to be more focus, and maybe this isn't autistic specific, but there needs to be a focus on looking at the things that we've been through in life. Because people, when they say they don't know what to do or what they be good at or what they want to do, I always say, well, what have you been through in life? Because I really do believe that everything has happened for a reason and it's shaped you for your future. But also, these big moments that we've had in our lives, they've impacted you in a way that have made you, whatever way it is, overly compassionate or overly driven in certain ways because something that's the fuel for you. And so you really want to tap into those life events that have happened because they're going to help you stay satisfied in whatever you choose to do later. If they don't align with your past, I mean, granted, some people are trying to leave their past behind in some way or another, but that really can fuel you later on in life when you're tapping into making change because of something happening in your past.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. And I think the other kind of element is you have to be open to difference.
Yeah.
Because if you're not open to difference, then you can get distracted away from those things that happen to you. There are things that may be traumatic experiences that you've had where a difference in you has expressed itself and then been beaten down or been squashed by somebody, you know.
Mhm.
And to be able to say, you know what, I would say that's one of the biggest things that has happened to me in my life. And it's the greatest gift I've ever had was understanding that I don't need to just go along with the default, with the program and the playbook of life. And
Yeah.
I can fully reject that. And I can not only accept difference, I can embrace it and I can celebrate it and I can help other people do the same. That's been in me, not that I was ever like very rigid, but I was following the playbook.
What you're not
Of life.
doing with your life. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this whole experience has rewired my own thinking, rewired my brain around the freedom of being able to come up with your own playbook,
Mhm.
whatever that is.
Yeah.
And that all came as a result of my son.
Yeah. So you wrote a book, Rebranding Autism. At what point did this come about? How old was your son when you wrote the book?
I actually just wrote it last year.
Okay. Okay.
By the way, just to jump forward, he's 28. He is in his senior year at University of Colorado at Denver in mechanical engineering. So he took a few years to work. That was one of the little tests that we did. Can he have a full-time job? And yes, he made airbags for the Toyota Tacoma
Wow.
airbag manufacturing. He did brilliantly for a couple years there. Then he went back to school. I had told this story to other people, and several times people said, "You need to write a book. You need to write this."
Yeah.
And for you, how many times have you heard that? I would say what what has ground on me over the years is the fact that people are completely overlooking this population of people. The way they see them is not the way I see them. And I want people to see autism and see autistic people how I see them,
How
which is their
I'm
strength.
I'm just curious, how do you think that people see autistic?
Ranges from I know something close to nothing about it, you know, all I know is that it is some debilitating thing that I see in other people and that I've heard from other people. So it can range from just a very thin understanding at all to some appreciation for the unique strengths of autistic people, but mostly seen as through the lens of deficit and disorder.
Mhm.
And then from challenge, I think most people from educators to employers, potential employers to family members look through the lens again of deficit and they're focused on all of the challenges that come with autism. Again, it was sort of the way I saw things as there's this external thing called autism that is afflicting my son. And I didn't see it as this is a neurodistinction. This is the way his brain is wired. And I can fully appreciate that. So I think that not only can I fully appreciate it and understand why he thinks this way, but I can, I can celebrate and I can be 100% behind who he is as a person. And rather than seeing this big label of autism across his forehead, which when he was younger, that's what I saw a lot of. When I thought of him, I thought of autism. I see him for who he is. and for his uniqueness and for his incredible and amazing talents and gifts, even though those might look different than other people.
So this book then is for everyone. It's for somebody that has an autistic child and maybe is in the place that you were in the early stages where they're just seeing their child as these labeled things. And then even for people that need to understand more about autism.
I think, yeah, the feedback that I've gotten is from both. I see it from people who are very familiar with autism and who have said, yeah, I see my son or I see my daughter differently now. It really has changed
Yeah.
how I see them. And then it's come from people who have very limited exposure to autism. So I was at a conference and a person I know said, I loved your book. He said, I knew very little about autism and I couldn't stop reading it. And by the end of it, I go, he was a small business owner. He goes, this person who works for me, I think it is on the autism spectrum
Yeah.
because I'm seeing a lot of the same thing. And you know what? Now I understand who he is. Now I understand better what his strengths are and how do you optimize those strengths working for me. So that's exactly what I'm hoping for.
Well, in general, in this world, I think we need to really understand that everybody has these unique gifts and qualities and characteristics and even quirks about them and be less judgmental. And we all need to just be more accepting of one another.
I think that, again, yeah, that's the beauty of strength-based thinking is that you're rounding up on people
Hmm.
and you're open to difference and you're open to uniqueness. And that's very liberating because if you're, again, if you're kind of stuck with this rigid idea of who people are and how they should be, that is for me, that's anxiety ridden world that you're living in.
Yeah. When we're talking about all this, I'm reminded and thinking back to I taught special ed actually. They let me, I say. They did. They let me teach special ed. I mean, I actually was very good with the kids in special ed, but I taught the summer class and there was this little girl that wasn't speaking. She was pretty nonverbal. I actually could get her to say a few things. I don't know. There was maybe just something between her and I, but her mom was like very adamant that she was not to learn sign language. And I remember talking to the speech therapist about this, and the speech therapist was saying how this is not good for the little girl because all you're doing is preventing her from having a way to speak because she really wasn't speaking. So it's like you've got to meet them where they're at and give them the tools to be able to start thriving in some way or another. And she would have, I think they believed like she would have spoken with sign language, but her mom just would not let her learn sign language because she felt like if she learned sign language, she'll just never speak and she'll just rely on that. And it's like, or your daughter may just never speak at all. So what if she has the ability to at least speak with sign language and then hopefully it would evolve from there, but the mom just wasn't seeing it.
It reminds me of, if we have time for a quick story, it reminds me of a young man that I feature in my book. And this is a family friend, actually. His name is Nolan Ferris.
Okay.
And Nolan was born basically weighing the size of 4 cubes of butter. So he was extremely premature. They didn't think he was going to live. They didn't think he was going to live a day. He lived a day. They didn't think he was going to live a year. He spent the first year in the NICU and he's had 24 surgeries throughout his life. But he would be someone you would say is heavily impacted from an autism perspective. But his parents, to their credit, they tapped into his strength like early on. So he would be in his NICU bed and they noted that he liked sounds, paid attention to sounds. So they got him this oversized piano with oversized keyboards that he could kick with his feet in his NICU bed or whatever, crib.
Mhm.
And so he would do that all day long. He would just kick the keys of this piano. They got him home and they didn't think he would ever walk. So his parents, he had a tracheotomy and he had a unit that helped him breathe. They bought a keyboard and they put it out of his reach. So he had to motate, to wherever that keyboard was. So he would kind of do this reverse crawl thing on his back
Uh-huh.
to get to the keyboard, and then he would play it. And then they put it up so he had to stand to reach it. And over the years, he's now in his early 20s. If you go to their house, first of all, he has anywhere from 2 to 8 devices playing simultaneously, like a keyboard. He doesn't, when he sees a few feet in front of him, he'll have YouTube going and have music playing from all these different devices. And he'll be composing music through these devices. He doesn't speak
Okay.
in a conventional sense, but he can communicate through his devices. So if he says, I need my battery changed on my iPad, he'll navigate to a very specific second in a video that says, I need to change my battery.
Wow.
So there is some, I guess, there is a world that he lives in, and he is happy and he's thriving. He will, from the time he wakes up in the morning to the time he goes to bed, it is music and it is composing music. And I ask his parents, friends of ours, is Nolan happy? And they say, he's the happiest person we know
Oh,
because
I love that.
there's nothing that is complicating his life. He's thriving in his strength. So that to me is an example of parents who said, you know what? We are going to create a place for him to thrive,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like. It's not what that looks like for other people, but it looks like that for him. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, that is beautiful.
When I see Nolan, when I think of Nolan, I think of this. You ever seen those photographs of this kind of tree growing in a rocky cliff or some impossible place for it to grow?
Mhm.
That's the way I see Nolan. Just beautiful person in an environment that you would think there's no way someone could grow in that environment. But he has, and he has a beautiful life.
Yeah. I was thinking when you were sharing this story about how sometimes we just accept what somebody may say, the doctors say about your child or even ourselves, right? They say, oh, you're just never going to be this or that. And I hate to ever listen to any of those never statements. You just never know. And I feel like we need to give people more choices of, okay, here's your situation right now. It may stay the same, but it may not. And if you want to try, you can try this, this, and this. And we so often don't even give people choices or opportunities to try to grow themselves. And this is autistic or not.
Yeah. And I guess the message is whether people tell you that or whether you just take it and you say, yep, I think there's a kind of a healthy,
Thank you, but no thank you.
healthy defiance there to say, we're going to write our own playbook. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Yeah.
And we're going to go wherever that takes us.
Yeah.
And we're going to meet our kids, where they are. And we're going to discover their strengths and we're going to build a life around those strengths.
Yeah. I think this is all very helpful information for people that are on their journey with their children being autistic, but even just for the people that don't have an autistic child and just learning how to navigate this world with them and help them thrive as well, because we are their support.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's applicable to everyone.
Mhm. What would you say to parents that are questioning it if their kid is autistic or not? What would be the first step for them?
If you have questions, if you're familiar with some of the signatures, I guess, of autism, look into it, find out for sure. Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah.
Of course, I would point them toward my book, Rebranding Autism, because it does describe what autism is and what it looks like and how you recognize it. But beyond that, how you build a strength identity based on that,
Mm,
not because of it, based on autism. So I would say, first of all, don't be afraid to acknowledge that possibility.
mhm,
I've had parents who have adult children and they've always been afraid of their child not being normal.
mhm.
And that child grows up knowing that they are different, that they have differences, and they've never been given the opportunity to understand what that means.
Yeah. Do you think it's hard for kids to get diagnosed? Because I don't know if this is different from health conditions, but there's certainly health conditions where you go in and it's just test after test, and doctors sometimes will say there's nothing wrong, you're just fine. Do you think that's something parents experience sometimes where really their kid is on the spectrum and does need special services, but they're being told they're just fine?
I think that, again, autism is a neurodistinction. It's not a disease. It's
Right.
not anything that you have or you don't have. It's the way your brain is wired.
Mhm.
The way your brain is wired is inherent in the human experience. There's an incredible book written by Simon Baron Cohen from Cambridge, an autism expert, and it's called The Pattern Seekers. So, in this book, he outlines two broad cognitive profiles. You've got empathizers who are good at reading people, communicating, knowing what to say, when to say it. Also, deception. I believe you have to understand well, how people are thinking. And then you've got the systemizers. And these are the people who recognize patterns and who test a hypothesis to see if I do this, then this is likely to happen over and over and over. These are the systemizers. And he's established that overwhelming, like double the number of people in the systemizer category are on the autism spectrum. And so it's a cognitive profile that is very common and pronounced in this systemizer cognitive profile. And he furthermore says that throughout human history, almost all of the inventions that have come from humans have come from this profile, this
Mhm.
cognitive profile. So
Okay.
that's one of the things that I want people to be proud of. That's a history that is so empowering to know that it isn't a dysfunction, as it is a neurotype that can be tied to that's inherent in the human condition and it is tied to the great inventions throughout
Mhm.
human history.
Yeah, I'm just asking though if you feel like there is this downfall where doctors are not diagnosing kids that should be getting diagnosed. And I'm not saying, like, I don't know if you were taking it that way or not, but I wasn't saying that there's anything wrong with these children or, but I just know you can go to the doctor for a condition. And I know it's not a disease. I understand that, but you can go to the doctor seeking help and wanting something. I mean, not even diseases. I mean, just skin
Yeah.
conditions or things. Are there doctors that people take their kids to and they say they're fine when they're not? And I'm not saying that they're not fine, but if you have autism, I think you want to get it identified because if you get it identified, you're going to qualify for special services that, like I was talking about with some of these kids, like they need the special services because those are people that are specifically trained to help those kids in the
Yeah.
best way possible.
Yeah. And where I was going with that in my mind, at least, I apologize for not kind of articulating this is when we took our son to be diagnosed, what we found was that there is no black and white. There's
Okay.
no is or isn't kind of criteria. It's based off of several behaviors that are observed that you discuss with whoever's doing the diagnosis. It's a thing where you say, if these behaviors present themselves to this degree
Mhm.
in across these domains,
Yeah.
then we can give it an autism diagnosis,
Okay.
which for our son meant the psychiatrist said, he's somewhere on the spectrum.
Okay.
I don't, I can't give you an exact, yes, he is autistic,
Okay.
though we know it was more like He's somewhere on the spectrum. Yeah, on the higher end of the spectrum.
Okay.
And so there's this whole really gray area
Yeah.
involved in an autism diagnosis. But what we do know is that there are some signatures among people who are not diagnosed and who are diagnosed. We're seeing a lot of adults who are, and that partially explains the rise in diagnoses among autistic people, is that a lot of people, adults, are becoming aware, oh, there's this thing called autism, and I might be on the autism spectrum. So they go in and they've always known that they might have some of these signatures. They might have run into some challenges
Yeah.
in the workplace around that. And they go in and they get diagnosed and they're very relieved once they're diagnosed. So I think a lot of the net new diagnoses are coming from adults who,
Okay. So now I have a question. What is the definition of autism?
yeah, it's defined in the DSM, which is a medical journal that providers use to be able to diagnose autism. Again, it looks at different behaviors across domains like social communication, rigidity. And so you'll go through that, and this DSM outlines what those behaviors are within those certain domains. And then it will give criteria to say if it expresses itself like this to this level, then you start to, and if you have enough of those, I guess, signatures, then that will constitute an autism diagnosis. It's kind of like a pie. Some people have a bigger piece of the pie in terms of rigidity. Some people have a bigger piece of the pie in terms of social communication. So you have these different pieces of the pie. That's why they call it a spectrum, because not everyone has the same pie and the same,
Yes.
pieces of it.
Somewhere on the spectrum. Yeah.
Somewhere on the spectrum.
I know my friend and I sometimes we're like, we're probably autistic because there's certain things, but I feel like maybe everybody has a little bit in them because we all have these weird little things about us that you fixate on. I mean, I know I have my strange things. Like everybody has something, I feel like.
That's exactly what that's why I'm saying it is inherent to who we are. Because I've had the same thought. And most people, do I have social anxiety when I go to this? Am I kind of rigid in this, that, and the other? Do I have pronounced interests in this, that, and the other? I think everyone can relate to that because it's part of our brain makeup.
Mhm.
It's just that these folks who are in this population, those things are more pronounced and sometimes much more pronounced.
There may be more pieces of the pie.
There may be, they may have bigger pieces of the pie to the point where they experience life differently than you would say a neurotypical person would
Okay.
experience. For example, it was a revelation when my son was like having these meltdowns. I couldn't explain it. I knew he was a good kid, I wasn't anything to do with his behavior, but why was he having all these meltdowns? And I couldn't get my head around the fact that he was just taking in so much more stimulus and so much more data, honestly, than we would that no wonder. And so I started to draw a distinction. Okay, this is not a tantrum. Tantrum is, of course, he had tantrums like any kid, but this is not I'm throwing a tantrum so I can get this. This is, I am responding to an overwhelm
Yes. Okay.
of data, of information, of stimulus. And once I got that, it was like, okay, that is completely logical
Mm.
that you would have that reaction to that sense of being overwhelmed. So again, if you avoid knowing, you're never going to get to the point where you understand it
Mhm.
and are able to help that individual navigate life, not only navigate life, but thrive in life.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all this. I think it's very valuable information. Where can people find your book and where can they find you if they want to connect with you? If
I would love to
allow
connect
that.
with anyone and everyone. So
Okay.
My book is called Rebranding Autism, A Guide to Seeing Strength on the Spectrum. It's online, Amazon. It's in paperback, ebook, audio book. You can also find it on Barnes & Noble and other online outlets. And then to learn more about the First Ascent program and other things that we have going on, just go to autismelevated.com.
Okay. Is that how they reach out to you?
Yeah, reach out to me. There's the contact information there.
Okay.
Would love
Great.
to chat with anyone.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Andrea.